let's get started on making our first Eberron character. We know for sure that we are going to be making a Changeling character. So this will require, this is our normal character creation sheet. And a couple things we might just be able to skip over. I don't know. We'll play it by ear, we'll have fun, and let's have some funsies with these new races that are in the Eberron playtest. Male or female or multi-classed. We have a female changeling. Who is of the alignment 3575. This is going to be a chaotic good changeling. And we will be producing her at level, let's see, we rolled a 19, that's level 6. That means that we are going to be looking at getting one either stat bump or a feat. And let's determine with a percentile roll which that'll be. With a 78, we are going to take a feat then instead of a traditional ASI or ability score improvement. There we go. Now for her background, we are going to generate a 13-sided die. 1. We are an Acolyte. Oh, pardon me. An Acolyte background, and we're going to roll now this golden D12 and find out which class, in which class she'll be. We roll another 1. She is going to be a Barbarian. And specifically, we're going to go odds or evens to figure out which kind. And another 1. 1, 1, 1. She is going to be a Berserker Barbarian. There we go. We can look up things like height and weight in the Eberron guide. I don't have a chart for that made immediately. But what we will do for her age is roll percentile and find out where in her life cycle she is. We rolled a 21. That is going to be a young adult. So let's pop down here. She will be a young adult, and we could figure out what that is in Changelings, again, once we look at the source material. Couple other random placeholders, 2d8 for personality traits. We have a 7 and a 5. Then 3d6 for an ideal bond and flaw. 1, 4, and 1. Now, there is going to be a little bit more random number generation when it comes to making these Eberron characters. Because we do want to try and make them not just as a static character or a stale character, but for the end of the week, I want to put them into an Eberron campaign setting. And we'll go through that process on Saturday as well. The Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron, or the 5th edition supplement that's supporting this, does give us some very interesting alternatives or considerations for building for building a character in the Eberron setting. So we're going to get rid of this, okay? Sharn is a very large metropolitan area in the world of Eberron. The City of Towers draws people from across the world. What's brought your character to Sharn? Do you have deep roots in the city, or have you just stepped off the lightning rail? Backgrounds provide a strong foundation for building a story. If you're a noble, are you tied to one of the founding families, etc.? I'm sorry, pardon me. Before broadcasting, like, I scarfed down some food, and so I bought very delicious Thai food, by the way. We have an excellent Thai restaurant close by. And so your body's like, no, come on, just let me digest. I need some energy. I need the blood to process things. And like, no, I gotta host. Come on. All right, so we are an Acolyte. And this is going to give us a particular Sharn flavor of Acolyte. We're going to roll a d4, and this is going to help influence or provide an Eberron theme to our generic Acolyte background. 3. You're here on a pilgrimage, seeking an audience with the head of your faith in Sharn, but the intermediaries have demanded a small fortune to set up this meeting. So here we can actually put... We'll put E3 for Eberron, like, third option, because acolytes don't normally have any sort of specialty background, and we know that this is going to be an Eberron flavor to our acolyte. You're here on a pilgrimage. There we go. We'll do this. E3. So here's a plot point, not just for us as a PC, but this is something for our DMs to consider as well. You can see that they have these alternates for all of the normal backgrounds, all 13 of them that you can find. And this is a little preview of our campaign generation. Oh, pardon me. Now, something else to consider. This is going to flash a little bit as we go up in the source book. There are different... Santa, this is an amazing document that provides a wonderful encapsulated world for you to consider if you want to purely run your game within Eberron, or if you want to take elements of Eberron and insert it into your own game. As these exist, why don't we add them to our characters that, normally, in the PHP it doesn't have this. It doesn't have this extra layer. But to get us into this neo-noir, swashbuckling, kind of a pulp storytelling fashion, let's use the resources in our Wayfinder's Guide to Eberron to help flesh out our characters. So here's our regret, and we're going to roll a d10 and find out what our character's regret is. 6. You engaged in covert operations for a nation, either as a spy or soldier. While you were serving your country, you did unforgivable things. So I don't know, we'll go like Acolyte 3, Regret 6. So she carries a regret, and what we'll do for our second character tonight, our Kalishtar, instead of a regret, we'll give our Kalishtar a debt of some kind. Why would our character have a debt of some kind? Now, it sounds like from our regret that we were in some sort of a military operation. what is interesting is that there is a way to incorporate some, not all, but actually I should say most of the backgrounds in a military fashion that you can see here. Because the effects of this last war that had been fought on Eberron as a giant civil war have a large impact on the people who live here. Having a flavor of a military background could be important. So we are an Acolyte, and if we look down, Soldier, Sailor, Soldier, Noble, Charlatan, Entertainer, aha, Acolyte here. You provided spiritual support to your troops. Were you always devout, or did you find your faith on the battlefield? So here is our here's our military background, and this is number 6. As an Acolyte. Now, does this play into our character's regret? We'll find out. But she seemed to have served in this war, and it has left a mark on her. Alright, so here's a lot more kind of fluff. It talks about you know, how to incorporate elements, things to think about. Welcome to the main continent of Corvair. And here's a bunch of map info. We are going to skip ahead. Actually, we're gonna go to come on now. There's our Celestials. Here we go, Changelings. We're not going to get into Changeling yet. Let's finish our background as we normally do, and then we'll pop over here to look at the racial gifts or abilities that Changelings receive. She yawned in front of the Great Court. Hey, that could be Santa. Something like that could be taken as a high offense. All right, so here is our normal chapter 4 in the player's handbook, and we're going to scroll to, well, A is the first letter, Acolyte. Why are you meowing? I have a cat visiting me. He's announcing himself. Hi. You have food. You're not injured. You want to jump up and say hi to people? I hope so. There's a lot of people who'd like to see you. Alright, we are going to gain insight and religion from this background. We will get 2 languages of our choice. As a changeling, I want to say we get common and maybe one other. And so I'm going to put Acolyte and Acolyte here. Equipment, we will get a holy symbol, a prayer book, incense times 5, vestments, common clothes for the region, and a belt pouch with 15 gold in it. Our background feature is called Shelter of the Faithful. Your religion can fund a modest lifestyle, so room and board for you and your friends or your party members, if you are willing to help out administer religious services while you're staying. I mean, depending on the philosophy you follow, it might be ubiquitous, it might be rare and kind of a point of light in a sea of darkness, something along those lines. This can be very, very good, not just to take care of a lot of the background, the background, well, the room and board stuff, but it's an excellent springboard for role-playing your character. Now let's look at her personality trait, especially as it'll be augmented by these other parts of her backstory. Number 7. I've enjoyed fine food, drink, and high society among my temple's elite. Rough living grates on me. And number 5, I quote, or I'll put miss/quote, sacred texts and proverbs in almost every situation. Next up is her ideal. Her ideal is 1, tradition. The ancient traditions of worship and sacrifice must be preserved and upheld. Next up is her bond, number 4. Everything I do is for the common people. And lastly, her flaw is number 1. Whoops. There we go. Her flaw is 1. I judge others harshly and myself even more severely. Now, take these personality aspects and incorporate them into our Acolyte background. Why is she going to the city of Sharn? You're here on a pilgrimage seeking an audience with the head of your faith in Sharn, but the intermediaries have demanded a small fortune to set up this meeting. R6, so this is our regret. You engaged in covert operations for a nation, either as a spy or soldier, while you were serving your country. You did, and then while you were serving your country, you did unforgivable things. And Santa came up with maybe, you know, she acted inappropriately. Also, as part of our military background as an Acolyte, we provided spiritual support to our troops. Were you always devout, or did you find your faith on the battlefield? You know, were we a chaplain? Or were we just a common soldier that did find our faith and earn our way into the good graces of an organized religion while we were fighting? Some very good peach tea. All right. Now, in order to fill in a little bit more detail, we need to return back to our Wayfinder's guide here and look at the properties of being a changeling. In their natural form, changelings are slender and pale with colorless eyes and silver white hair. A changeling can alter its physical appearance with a thought. While this can be used to deceive others, it is a natural form of expression for the changeling. Changeling shifts shapes the way others might change clothes. A casual shape, one created on the spur of the moment with no depth or history, is called a mask. A mask can be used to express a mood or serve a specific purpose and then never used again. However, many changelings develop identities that have more depth. They build an identity over time, crafting a persona with a history and beliefs. This focused identity helps a changeling pinpoint a particular skill or emotion. A changeling adventurer might have personas for many situations, including negotiation, investigation, and combat. Personas can be shared by multiple changelings. There might be 3 healers in a community, but whoever is on duty will adopt the persona of Tech, the kindly old medic. Personas can even be passed down through a family, allowing a younger changeling to take advantage of contacts established by the previous users of the persona. This would be something for us to figure out. What would be a persona or 2 that she would carry? In fact, even if you almost want to write it as a racial feature, there is one for the Divergent Persona, for sure. And so we can incorporate that in race. But this is something to think about. If you were making this character, which other kinds of personas would you give her? A changeling might use a different name for each mask and persona, and adopt new names as easily as they develop new faces. The true name of a changeling tends to be simple and monosyllabic. However, there are often accents to a changeling's name that are expressed through shapeshifting. Something single skins will likely miss. So, two changelings might have the same name Jin, but one is Jin with the vivid blue eyes and one is Jin with the golden cheeks. Changelings have a fluid relationship with gender, seeing it as one characteristic to change among many others. Norton, I'm back. Who knew splashing water on one's face would be so effective to wake up? Who didn't notice what who didn't notice what, Norton? Alright, here are our changeling traits. Our charisma score increases by 2. And either your dexterity or your intelligence increases by 1, your choice. Oh, the stream went offline and came back. I wanted to try and reset it. Given her physical nature, I don't know. Dex or int, probably Dex. But you know what? We'll put a 1 in parentheses down here because maybe we want intelligence. Age. Changelings mature slightly faster than humans, but share a similar lifespan, typically a century or less. While a changeling can shapeshift to conceal their age, the effects of aging still catch up to them. So if they have an approximate human lifespan, we look at a young adult for a human that's 16 to 25. Let's roll a d10. Roll a 10. So she is 25 years old. In their natural forms, changelings average between 5 to 6 feet in height with a slender build. So that's going to be a little bit more, I think it's going to be a little bit more like an elf. Why don't we use the height and weight chart of an elf in order to determine their own here. So we'll use a high elf. They start at 4 feet, 6 inches tall, and we're going to add 2d10. Alright, we're adding a foot. So she is going to be 5 feet, 6 inches tall. We're going to take that same 10 and multiply it by 1d4. 3. I'm sorry, 12 times 3 is 36. We're going to add 36 to 90, and she's 126 pounds in whatever her quote-unquote normal form is. Okay. Our base walking speed as a changeling is 30 feet. So 30, 15, 15, 0. We get, as a racial feature, change appearance. As an action, you can transform your appearance or revert to your natural form. You can't duplicate the appearance of a creature you've never seen, and you revert to your normal form or your natural form if you die. You decide what you look like, including your height, weight, facial features, the sound of your voice, coloration, hair length, sex, and any other distinguishing characteristics. You can make yourself appear as a member of another race, though none of your game statistics change. You also can't appear as a creature of a different size than you, and your basic shape stays the same. If you're bipedal, you can't use this trait to become quadrupedal, for instance. Your clothing and other equipment don't change in appearance, size, or shape to match your new form, requiring you to keep a few extra outfits on hand to make the most compelling disguise possible. Even to the most astute observers, your ruse is usually indiscernible. If you rouse suspicion, or if a wary creature suspects something is amiss, you can have advantage on any charisma deception check you make to avoid detection. We also are going to get Changeling Instincts. You gain proficiency with 2 of the following skills of your choice: Deception, Intimidation, Insight, and Persuasion. Well, if we were in the military, we're a Barbarian Berserker, and also consider that we're an Acolyte. Probably Intimidation and Persuasion. Those seem to me to be the 2 skills that this character would focus on. If you think differently, please let me know as we continue to develop her. Unsettling Visage. When a creature you can see makes an attack roll against you, you can use your reaction to impose disadvantage on the roll. You must use this feature before knowing whether the attack hits or misses. Using this trait reveals your shape-shifting nature to any creature within 30 feet that can see you. Once you use this trait, you can't use it again until you finish a short or a long rest. As well, we are going to have a Divergent Persona. You gain proficiency with 1 tool of your choice. Define a unique identity associated with that proficiency. Establish the name, race, gender, age, and other details. While you are in the form of this persona, the related proficiency bonus is doubled for any ability check you make that uses that proficiency. So we will get a tool proficiency, and if we take the form of this persona, our relative ability is going to be doubled. So I'm going to put a line of question marks as we need to determine who is our female changeling a dwarven blacksmith, an elven leather worker, a human alchemist, something like that, a halfling tinkerer. Sounds like very strong racial traits, Santa. Well, this is technically playtest material. So we can treat this the same as Unearthed Arcana. This is not yet official D&D content. It is on its way. If you invest in this book, because it is $20 on the DM's Guild website, you can give your feedback, and as the book gets refined, you will be sent updated books as things balance out and go from there. But overall, in Eberron, because the society is more advanced and it does tend to have a broader magical base, that would indicate that people have more time to study, to learn, to practice, to take up a craft, to do these things that magic is helping to save time in doing. So, compared to standard vanilla PHB D&D characters, Eberron characters, and in my opinion especially, pardon me, I almost bit my tongue, especially Dragon Mark characters, are going to be stronger than a normal D&D character. In the world of Eberron, everyone has access to this higher level of learning and empowerment, etc. And so it equals out because the setting was made for these considerations. Let's see. Languages you can speak, read, and write Common, and 2 others of your choice. So there's one racial, and then here is... So we speak Common, 2 racial, and 2 that we learned for being an Acolyte. That's pretty good, huh? Okay, so this is what we're getting. This is what we're getting for being just a changeling. Now we're going to pop back over to the player's handbook, and we are going to go to classes and barbarian. And now we will build her as a barbarian. At level 6, see, this is what we're getting here. Our proficiency bonus is a +3. We will get to rage 4 times a day. And our damage while we rage is +2. Being a barbarian, we are a D12 hit die class. At a level 6, well, we have 6 D12 hit die to spend on natural curing. We are going to get light and medium armor proficiencies, as well as shield proficiencies. There we go. Weapons, simple and martial. No tool proficiencies. So for tool, I'm going to put a question mark up here because we are going to learn a tool proficiency due to this Divergent Persona. Strength and Constitution are the saving throws in which we're proficient. Skills, choose 2 from Animal Handling, Athletics, Intimidation, Nature, Perception, and Survival. Alright, let's take a look at her background. You engaged in covert operations for a nation. While you're serving your country, you did unforgivable things. You provided spiritual support to your troops. Were you always devout, or did you find your faith on a battlefield? Perhaps, then, she was fighting, she survived, she found a faith in some way, maybe through some acts of survival, and maybe survival and nature. That's how she came to find her faith. If you think that it should be different for this character, please let me know, and just give a sentence about why you think it would be different. I'll be happy to change it. This is not my character, this is our character that we're building. Starts with a great axe or any martial melee weapon. If you want to give her something different, that's fine. For right now, why don't we give her a great axe? Hand axe ×2, so she has some ranged options. An explorer's pack and 4 javelins. There we go. Being a barbarian, we get to rage, which gives us a lot of good combat abilities. Just like with a wild shape, make sure you read the entire segment. If you have questions on it, let me know and I'll go back, but I tend to only hit the name or maybe a basic concept of each of these features in order to keep things moving. So if you need something explained or you need me to go back in some way to review it in more detail, be sure to let me know. We also are going to get unarmored defense. While you're not wearing any armor, your AC equals 10 plus Dex plus Con. You can still use a shield and gain this benefit. We are also going to receive Reckless Attack which will allow us to get advantage on our hits because we're granting advantage back to us. Danger sense. You gain an uncanny sense of when things are nearby and they as they shouldn't, or they aren't as they should be. You have advantage on dex saving throws against effects you can see, like traps, fireballs, etc. We will get our primal path at level 3. That's fine. We will get our ASI. Actually, we're going to take it as a feat. At level 5, we will get an extra attack, so we're swinging twice. We will also be getting some extra movement, or fast movement. Starting at 5th level, your speed increases by 10 feet while you aren't wearing heavy armor. This will go up to 40, giving us a 20 climb and a 20 swim. And still a 0 fly, because you can be strong and flap your arms. It doesn't mean you're going to get anywhere. Alright, we have chosen Path of the Berserker. This is our archetype feature, Frenzy. Starting when you choose this path at 3rd level, you can go into a frenzy when you rage. If you do so, for the duration of your rage, you can make a single melee weapon attack as a bonus action on each of your turns after this one. When your rage ends, you suffer 1 level of exhaustion, described in Appendix A. And at level 6, we get Mindless Rage. You can't be charmed or frightened while raging. If you are charmed or frightened when you enter your rage, the effect is suspended for the duration of the rage. So that's what we get by level 6. Okay? That being said, we're probably going to stick with the dexterity instead of the intelligence. So that'll be our bump right there. Now we need to choose a feat for our character, as well as drop in our ability scores from the standard array as noted up here. Strength and Con are very big for barbarians. Dex is as well, because that is a defensive stat for them. What we might want to do is go... Let's see. Change our appearance, Unsettling Visage, Divergent Persona. So what if we went... 15 strength, 14 con, 13 dex, $12 charisma, $10 wisdom, and 8 intelligence. If you want to suggest an alternative layout for the standard array, please go ahead and do so and include a note why. The reason why I'm thinking this, she does know of nature and religion, and those seem to be her specialties, and maybe she doesn't know too much more about the world around her. She's a very instinctual girl. You know, she is more wise and intelligent, but she has a higher charisma because of her being this acolyte, trying to persuade or intimidate people to do something, which could be the source of her shame, too. Also, she would have to have a higher charisma, in my opinion, if she is entertaining this personality trait of, I've enjoyed fine food, drink, and high society. I could entertain as well if we went 12 wisdom instead, and then we went 10 charisma to give her a 12 and a 12. Because she does judge people harshly, giving her some kind of a bonus to insight may be in her character's mood, mode, idiom, theme, whatever you'd like to call it. All right, let's say that we do this. This is going to give us a dexterity of 14 and a charisma of 12. if we look at the feats that are available now in Chapter 6, while we do not get the normal ability score increase of +2 to 1 stat or 1 ability, or +1 to 2 abilities, we might be able to squeeze out something here that could help give her strength in some other way. Let's see, so she's a melee fighter, she was in the military, provided spiritual support to your troops, were you always devout, I judge others harshly. Athlete could be good for her. Great Weapon Master could be interesting. Before you make a melee attack with a heavy weapon that you're proficient with, you can choose to take a -5 penalty to the attack roll. If the attack hits, add +10 to the attack's damage. Martial Adept could be interesting, as she was in the military. You have martial training that allows you to perform special combat maneuvers. Mobile would give her another 10 feet of movement. That could be interesting. Savage Attacker. Once per turn, when you roll damage for a melee weapon attack, you can re-roll the weapon damage and use either total. That could be a very interesting one, too. Everything I do is for the common people. I judge others harshly and myself even more severely. The ancient traditions of worship and sacrifice must be observed and upheld. I've enjoyed fine food, drink, and high society among my temple's elite. Rough living grates on me. I either misquote or quote sacred texts and proverbs in almost every situation. Probably more of the misquote, because intelligence isn't her highest feature. You've engaged in covert operations for a nation, or serving your country, you did unforgivable things. Could that mean that she had to kill some of her own countrymen in order to keep up her persona? You provided spiritual support to your troops. Were you always devout, or did you find your faith on the battlefield? You're here on a pilgrimage seeking an audience with the head of your faith in Sharn, but the intermediaries have demanded a small fortune to set up this meeting. I think she'd be a savage attacker. Very militaristic. You know, when she decides to swing her weapon, it is with her full faith and conviction that she does so. Yes, we have a barbarian, but maybe we have kind of a holy barbarian, a crusader of some kind. Or someone who has realized that I need to make sure that I am 100% comfortable with drawing my weapon because it can't be put away without tasting blood or something along those lines. Alright, there's no stat bump for that, but we do get 1 charisma, 1 wisdom, -1 int, 2 con, 2 dex, and 2 strength. Almost on 3. With this now, we can go through and we have a 5 saving throw here, 5 saving throw here. Rhodium, roll a crit on int. She actually properly quotes something and everyone gets shocked. Hey, that would be a really fun roleplay opportunity, right, Rhodium? Thank you for suggesting that. That actually kind of makes me smile there. Filling in these numbers will be pretty easy. 2 nature, 2 religion. Otherwise, it's a Control-C, Control-V for this -1. You know, she's fairly well-rounded, if you look at it. I mean, look at her stat spread and look at her skills. She definitely gets by in the world, even at level 6. She has a good mix of skills, and also her strengths, right? Her physical ability complement her social or mental abilities. And then she has this, you know, very neutral. She's capable in dex. She's pretty well balanced. Now that we've dropped the engine in the character, well, she's earned a name. Passive perception is going to be 11, because that is 10 plus her perception modifier of 1. That's her natural awareness. Her armor class, if she's not wearing armor, is 2 dex, 2 con, plus 10, so her armor class is 14. Her hit points, she gets the full 12 at level 1, and then for the other levels of her 6, therefore 5, she gets half plus 1 of her hit die. In other words, 7. Half of 12 is 6, plus 1 is 7. Then for every level, therefore all 6, she gets bonus hit points equal to her Constitution modifier. So here we have 12. Here we have 35. So this is 47, 59. She has 59 hit points at level 6. Her initiative is going to be a +2 because initiative in 5th edition is simply a dexterity check. And she has 0 dark vision. Changelings are medium creatures. If she's swinging a great axe or anything in melee, so great axe, hand axe, javelin, because those can be used in melee, but they also have the thrown property, meaning that they can be used as a ranged weapon, but instead of having to use dex, you can use strength instead. It's kind of the opposite of finesse. So we have a +5. There we go. Great axes. Let's go over to our Chapter 5 equipment. There we go. Great axes are 1d12 slashing, 1d12 +2. Remember, add your strength modifier for bonus damage. Hand axes, or in this case, no, I'm sorry, that was light hammers, not throwing hammers. Hand axes are 1d6 +2 slashing. And javelins are 1d6 +2 piercing. Yep, Santa, great axe is 1d12. We really don't have to worry about any of this here, unless on this modified sheet, if you want to put something like rages, and in which case we can actually put 4 down here. Because this part of the modified character sheet is for things like key points, sorcerer points, you know, some sort of consumable. If you want to put rages down here, you can, and that way you don't have to be redundant. And so you could just put rage damage is +2. So that'll go up here. You know, something to consider. In parentheses, you could put +2R or something as a note if you're raging. No spells, and there's not an animal companion that she's getting. So we have built our character, and now it's up to us to further conceptualize her, because being a barbarian, you're pretty straightforward. But I think we have a very complex character who isn't just a one-shot wonder of a barbarian, where you're just all strength and con and that's it. Perhaps, Rhodium, perhaps a machine. This is Eberron. Machines are a lot more common, especially if it's a Warforged. In which case, then yes, we would be very much raging against a machine. So here are the background aspects that we need to weave into a tapestry to reflect this character's life. I've enjoyed fine food, drink, and high society among my temple's elite. Rough living grates on me. I misquote sacred texts and proverbs in almost every situation. Tradition. The ancient traditions of worship and sacrifice must be preserved and upheld. Everything I do is for the common people, and I judge others harshly and myself even more severely. As an acolyte, to bring us now into the modern, into today, you're here in Sharn, which is the big city in Corvair, within Eberron. You're here on a pilgrimage, seeking an audience with the head of your faith in Sharn, but the intermediaries have demanded a small fortune to set up this meeting. So that's the current what's happening. We have a regret as a character. Our regret is such. We have engaged in covert operations for a nation, either as a spy or a soldier. While you were serving your country, you did unforgivable things. What is her regret? As well, because she was in the military and she did fight in the last war, you provided spiritual support to your troops. Were you always devout, or did you find your faith on the battlefield? Santa says, I could imagine the characters say, I must enforce the traditions of my people that I can't remember properly, because that's what I think I was told to do. And you know what? Maybe even that's where she has some regret. What if during this war, what if, I don't know, she was hit in the head? Like, she was actually an intelligent woman. Because look, you run a barbarian, especially a berserker. You don't have to be the stupid one. In fact, we could even say that intelligence is her dump stat because she did receive some kind of a mental trauma in war, whether it's an emotional scar or a blow to the head that has somehow left a physical incapability. And so she has these moments where she does strike out against people. She does judge them harshly, even though she might be judging them against the wrong set of standards. Santa, you have a very good pitch. And Rhodium did too, right? Except if you roll a critical or something in some kind of knowledge religion, in which case she'd actually get it right. So what, 5% of the time? Or if your DM is feeling nice, maybe on a 19 or 20, so you get it on 10%. And so, despite her changing nature, think of this too. We have a changeling. Someone who's just used to changing shape and form, who is deeply now devoted to tradition, to upholding constant old ways. Maybe this is a way that she finds stability because she might not have stability otherwise. And so she's just this kind of living contradiction. But this is what helps her cope. This is what helps her live. You know, maybe after all this practice now, she's here in Sharn on a pilgrimage because she's saved up enough money to try and receive some kind of a blessing to fix her brain, to get back on track, to go to seminary school and learn the proper ways. I think we have a very compelling character, especially given the fact that she is a changeling. And don't forget, we need to also give her some kind of tool proficiency, right? Does she make shoes? Does she make barrels? Is she, you know, like a farmer or a cook or something along those lines? Not only does she get a tool proficiency, but when she takes on this other divergent persona in some fashion, then she gets double the ability score. Because she's actually, you know, whatever, Old Man Henderson, who is a famous cook and has been for the last 200 years. And everyone who becomes Old Man Henderson, the cooking just flows because it's a part of them. So we do need to conceptualize this persona. She needs a name herself. And really, I'm impressed that we have a very cool and deep character. Not just a, haha, I'm a changeling and I'm gonna, you know, I'm gonna be one thing into the, you know, one thing then another. How does one know that his traditions as an ever-changing being? Chronic amnesia, slowly blending into her form until she has to change again, leaving only the rage of the Berserker. Santa, you're coming up with some really good stuff, brother. How does one know his traditions as an ever-changing being? Chronic amnesia, slowly blending into her form until she has to change again, leaving only the rage of the Berserker. Rhodium says she makes barrels, then turns into Donkey Kong, then hurls them at plumbers. So she could be a cooper, right? A cooper is a name for people who make barrels. She could be a cooper. You know, I don't know if cooper tools exist, quote unquote, in the PHB, but that doesn't matter. It's a profession. It has its own set of tools and things. If we really wanted to boil it down, then we could probably call it either brewer's supplies, maybe, or carpenter's tools. You know, wooden barrels, something like that. But sure, Rhodium, we'll do this. She has Cooper tool proficiencies. That means, what is her divergent persona? It's so-and-so the Cooper. It doesn't have to be the name, but in theme, we have, you know, we have some Cooper class or Cooper persona that when she slips into this form, she's really good at making barrels. And she can speak 5 languages. Isn't that something? Well, there's not too much more besides adding on these minor details to her. We got to give her a name, and then I'm gonna get up and get a big pitcher of water. And we'll come back and we'll make a Kalishtar figure after this. Santa says, I don't really know the changeling lore. If a changeling doesn't know he is one, wouldn't he try and learn how to tune into the world? I'm reaching the limit of what I can explain in English, but you get the point. Yeah. I get what you're saying, Santa. Don't worry. You have explained yourself very well. And we could even give her this as a part of her background. Or, how about this, Santa? What if she didn't, you know, she could have received an injury to her head. What if this whole thing, you engaged in covert operations for a nation. While you're serving your country, you did unforgivable things. This is a regret. What if, during her time serving in the military, she did something that she considered so horrendous that she is blocking it. And she could be doing that through a shape change. unconsciously, she could be kind of like, I don't know, kind of like clenching up a part of her brain or something like that in order to keep this memory or to keep this information from leaking out because she doesn't want to relive it. And so her regret is this chronic amnesia that you're talking about, but it's a willful amnesia. It's a reflex at this point, so she keeps a part of her brain in this shape-shifted, you know, as she changes forms. Except maybe when she sleeps. Because maybe she doesn't have a form when she sleeps, and so that could come back as a nightmare, but when she wakes up, she clenches up again. Something along those lines. Because it's true, we have to consider, you know, not just a culture, but if you are born and you have this ability, what would you do? What would happen? What would you consider to be a travesty? The pure form of a changeling, Santa, I'll show you here. They tend to be rather skinny, frail-looking, very pale skin, very pale hair, and blank eyes. That way they can flush themselves with color and modify parts of their body. Now, in my own homebrew campaign world, we did have changelings, and the cultural take I had on them was you can change your form, and in fact, you can hold your form. You can hold your form for a number of days equal to your constitution modifier before you had to revert back to your normal shape. Or it wasn't even holding one form, but it's just you could be anything else but your normal form for a number of days equal to your con mod before you started suffering penalties of some kind because your body wasn't resting. You weren't allowing your body to rest. Think a little bit like, have you, Santa, or anyone else out there seen Star Trek Deep Space Nine? If so, there is a character named Odo who is who's a shape changer himself. He must revert back to his kind of liquid, viscous state every so often, otherwise well, bad things can start happening to him. So this was an aspect of the shape changer. Every so often, yeah, you have this great social fluidity and mobility, but once every X days, you had to just be your normal form for a day and let your body reset. It's fine, Santa, don't worry. I keep thinking about Code Quantum, the series where a man travels through time, randomly living. Oh, so that was called, over here, that was called Quantum Leap. And so he leapt into other people's bodies. I know what you're talking about, Santa. Yep, I know. Now, interestingly enough, too, as part of their social hierarchy, in my take on changelings, when a changeling was born, they were very neutral. I mean, you could look like a boy, a girl, you could look like, you know, anything that you've seen, right? You're very mutable. However, around the time of kind of a late puberty, like around 16 or so, your body as a changeling has, you know, you've practiced changing, you've gone, you know, you've had an innie, you've had an outie, if you get what I'm saying. But you haven't reached a sexual maturity, and your body needed some kind of a core as a part of your identity, as a part of that resting every so often. And so you would go through a choosing ceremony as a changeling, where at 16, 15, whatever, you would go through this ceremony in your tribe, and you would, as a part of you, fix your reproductive gender. Now, afterwards, you could be, you know, you could appear to have functional male parts and be a female changeling. However, when you reverted, and for purposes of carrying on the genetics of the tribe, you know, when you as a natural form changeling and you of a natural form changeling of another sex were to get together to reproduce, you would each have your default reproductive stages. And if you did not go through that choosing ceremony, as your body continued to age and grow, you would become unstable, because your body is maturing, but it doesn't have that central core to your being. It's not producing whatever hormones or chemicals or whatever a changeling body needs at that point in time of like a puberty. And so it was a way to have this default. And actually it was it was bad because the first time the players encountered something like this, there was a changeling from the area that they lived that was captured at a young age and was held effectively in a laboratory for study well past his, you know, like his 16th birthday. And when they found him, he was very mentally unstable and even physically unstable, because his body didn't know what to do. His mind had no core. He didn't go through this ceremony. He didn't have this core of stability. So he was a very fluid person. He could entertain two different lines of thinking and both of them be logical and non-contradictory. He would do things that would seemingly be evil, but for, in his mind, very justifiable causes. Really, he was an NPC who was out for revenge on the outfit that captured him and denied him this option to live as a normal changeling. Yeah, so, like, he would have trouble holding his shapes. He would shapeshift even inadvertently. His face would just kind of droop if he wasn't really concentrating on it. Or he might find that his elbow was accidentally on the other side, and so when he went to go try and reach for something, his arm would just reach backwards because his elbow was on the wrong side. Unstable body makes me think of unstable potions, bubbling and sizzling, bloating. Well, so not so much the bubbling and sizzling, but he was having a very difficult time holding his thoughts, and his thoughts are what was helping him hold his shape. And so Fritz was a very unstable person, and that name was a derivative, because not only is Fritz like a first name that you can find in it sounds Germanic, right? Fritz, F-R-I-T-Z. However, there's the colloquial expression that something is on the fritz, meaning something isn't working, something is unstable. And so I had Fritz Simon as, and none of the players at the time knew. They just thought he was a crazy guy, like a crazy human or whatever. And that he was a bad guy, question mark? He was one of those characters that you really had to think, is he evil? Or maybe he does evil things, but he's justified because he is legitimately crazy. He can't control himself. So we had Fritz Simon, who was a broken changeling. In a sense, he was a tragic character, but he wasn't necessarily an entirely likable character either. The PCs, I don't think, liked what happened to him, but Fritz, I think they kind of looked at him like he's a dog that needed to be put down. They felt sorry for him, but he couldn't continue to do what he was doing, even though it would bring down the actual big bad evil guy of the campaign, because it was not stable. Yeah, Santa. Yep, that's a good way of looking like that, or of looking at that. Yes. Anyway, I'm sorry. We're here talking about Eberron, and I'm going into my own homebrew take on this Eberron race. But, you know, through this week, as Eberron is challenging us to think of core 5th edition in a different way, well, how can we translate Eberron into our tabletop, or in a raw fashion where you want to run Eberron and be true to Eberron, or if we're getting the brain juices flowing, how can you take standard D&D and then incorporate it into your homebrew world? So, all right, everyone, stay tuned. I'm going to take about a 10-minute break to get up and stretch. I'm going to get some water. You all do the same. Use the restroom. Do what you got to do. It is, according to my clock, it is 1 a.m. So we'll meet back here at 1:10 a.m. my time. Okay? Yep, thank you, Santa.